Well, hello, my name is SherriAnneDuffy-King, and I am the writer of the title of A Crucified Innocence. I began this series about 15 years ago when I was like 15 or 16 years old. So, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Let's continue on from chapter 62, Bad Name. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. Lorelei's breath turned into ice as it brought Evie back to reality. No longer did Lorelei's fingers hurt Evie's temples. She rubbed her icy hands down Evie's cheeks, then bent inhumanly fast, letting off a lot of unnatural cracking sounds as she picked up the black, coiled sheets. Handing them to Evie, she smiled once more and said, "Good luck, Evie Trinity Bridgewater." "Thank you, Lorelei McGee." She thrust them out the bay window, then slowly backed away from Evie into the darkness. Slowly Lorelei faded into the peaceful shadows. Then a small cracking sound lifted up, and a tiny light shot from the fireplace and headed out the window and headed up to Eldor. Evie was mystified and full of questions, but brushed them away and continued on with her quest for Ashton. Evie slid down the sheets toward the unsuspecting servant at the base of the material. Evie knocked her off. Evie knocked her off her feet and into unconsciousness. All right. Not wanting to be recognized, Evie borrowed the girl's robe and covered her untamed curls, and then gently moved the girl away from the rope, further into the shadows. Evie apologized and went on her way. Halfway to the Towering Twins Inn, Evie ran into an old peddler named Thomas Avery. He was kind enough to share what little food he had with her and point her to the right direction. Evie thanked him and left in a hurry, sure that someone was on her trail. It took Evie all day until the following night to find the small town of Shrevegrove. The pathway Evie took split into two separate paths, one leading to the right headed for a red barn full of calm sleeping animals. The path leading left crept up to a sign being held up by two lances attached to a couple of knights. Then a small, barely lit two-story cabin stood sadly behind it. Evie walked up to the door, but was stunned to find it cracked open with a small chance of help. Evie turned to leave, but was stopped by a meager voice. "Wait, miss. Can I help you?" Evie turned to see a small, tow-headed boy seriously wanting to help anybody in distress. "Is this the Towering Twins Inn?" His eyes lit up. "Yes, ma'am. This is. How may I help you?" Evie glanced down, bashful. "I came here to mourn for the loss of General Aid McTavish." The little boy put his fingers to his lips and rushed to the cracked door and hollered in, "Have to go check on the animals. Be back in a little while, Pa." Then he rushed back to Evie. "My name is Little William Shaw. Follow me. Please, ma'am." Evie shook his hand and told him her name. His eyes lit up as he marveled at who he thought Evie was. After chatting up the journey, he stopped at some old black rust iron creaky gate doors, drenched in untamed vines. "Follow the pathway up the last stone. Don't stray from it, or you will be forever lost. He is at the end of the dirt path at the top of the hill." He gave Evie a hug for luck, then handed her two lush blood-red wild roses and left her at the iron gate. In bewilderment, each mausoleum was covered in deep vines and dirty mildew. The higher up the path Evie went, through the labyrinth of tombs and mausoleums, fog enveloped everything. Clouds covered the moon. But Evie forgot that there is no moon. It's Eldor. Evie's legs began to get tired and cold as she reached the top, covered deeply. Aiden's stone shimmered in what light crept through the hole in the clouds. Aiden McTavish, I am so sorry for everything. Evie fell to her knees and hunched over the now broken roses. The thorns digging into her skin. Evie fell onto her hands, not caring for the pain. Tears escaped her eyes and drenched from the petals to the dying roses on the ground, on the gravel at the base of the stone. The earth started to shake, knocking Evie off balance and onto her butt. Blue light erupted for a moment at the place where Evie dropped the roses and her tears and blood. The ground shook again. This time rain poured heavily and the foggy mist covered up the ground. Out of the ground burst one hand, pulling it to the surface. The other limb was a claw that helped dig it out. Evie almost jumped from her skin, half rotting corpse and half lichen. Skin and fur slowly seeping from the bones and falling into the disgusting piles of mesh before her eyes. Evie rushed to her feet, turning to run. The monster laughed, then pulled at his right eye, yanking it from its base, from his eye socket, and dragging the left eye into the skull and out the right socket. As the beast laughed some more, he spun the two eyes in a circle. Flying in midair, the rope split barbed spikes and gooey flesh splattered off of the balls. Then more spikes popped out from the eyes. Evie was knocked off of her feet by a force and pain she couldn't explain. As it hit, Evie fell and rolled down the hill, sliding through mud and weeds, knocking into shallow tombstones until a concrete fence broke her fall, and Evie hit her head. Dazed, Evie tried to catch her breath. Rain hit harder and faster. Down the hill crept the half-morbid monster man, the smell so intense and nasty that Evie could barely catch her own breath. You killed me, Evie. How could you be so cruel? I died for your dishonesty and treacherous motives, you backstabbing wench. Tears filled Evie's eyes. How could he, whatever he is, speak to her so cruelly? The eyes wrapped around Evie's legs, dug into her skin. The smell of blood lingered in the air. His nose twitched as hunger lifted his smile. Yum, you smell delicious. He bent low, then pranced on top of Evie, ready to dig into her flesh and feed its despicable, monstrous appetite. Chapter 63, Darkest Honesty. Glancing up past the monster's shoulders stood a 7-foot white marble angelic statue, arms spread wide. The statue's weapon of choice was a spiked metal lance, resting at a tilted angle near its feet. Thunder hit hard, blinding Evie. The monster was knocked off of her and thwarted back a couple of feet. Another wet animal of beige fur did the damage. As soon as Aiden's zombie carcass rolled a couple of feet away, the attacker ran to a marble statue that sat pillared over Evie and borrowed its spiked weapon. Hitting Aiden smack dab in the center of his chest, the weapon went in one side and was escorted out of his rotting back by his black maggot-infested heart. The weapon finally stopped a couple of feet away, half buried in wet grass, lodged in the dirt. The heart held a great and eerie movement from a vibration of the sudden stop. The beige beast ran at Aiden's body, jumping high and landing on his feet on the monster's shoulders, while ripping the head clean off, covering the beige beast in his decaying blood, then tossing it carelessly onto the spike where it lodged into the skull. in one eye hole and out the next, blood dripping down the pike to meet the black heart, where the rain helped the parts disintegrate down the weapon into the wet grassy mud puddles. The beige beast shook off his fur and the rain that drenched him. Soon he was Iolaus again. He walked toward Evie, his face serious. Evie could almost imagine what would come from his lips. She was to be scolded. Then he surprised her. "Why would you risk your life for my folly, uneducated decisions?" Iolaus bent low and reached for Evie's hand to help her up, but then set her sitting upright on the base of that angelic statue. He reached down and helped unloosen the painful eye cords and spikes sticking into her flesh. Bent low, he looked up at Evie. "Don't you understand? I love you, Evie Trinity Bridgewater." Gently he pulled a golden medallion out of his pocket. "I love you so much that I would give you what you yearn the most in all of Eldor and Embala combined, Aiden's medallion stith and freedom." He opened up Evie's hand and placed the golden trinket in her palm, then closed Evie's fingers over it. Tears welled up in her eyes. Chapter 64, Exhaustive Seizures. That night, little William Shaw let them take shelter in his family's barn. The rafters creaked all night long as if the pieces of wood that held up the ceiling were sharing laughs and inconspicuous secrets. Rain continued to pound heavily. The musky scent of wood and animal feed led to a stillness. Lightning let little light in from the frolicking storm about the countryside. Evie climbed the ladder up to the second floor of the barn. Material wet and uncomfortably sticky to her moist and hot skin, Iolaus climbed up before her to find a better place for comfort while they were sheltered and safe to keep warm and get some rest. As soon as Evie hit the top, her eyes rolled behind her head and Evie fell into a huge pile of hay. Exhaustion overran every ounce of her muscles. As Evie lay, everything began to swirl. Evie even believed that her body began to twitch. Chapter 65, Destiny Unraveled. This time, hazy smoke, white and fluffy, swirled around the area Evie was in and beyond. Blue of all shades filled in the spaces of the cloud swirls. When Evie looked up and down, all was clear and empty. A thick layer of flooring kept her from falling through the clouds to her death. Ahead, something crawled out of the misty fluffs, slowly taking form. It was Lorelei. Face still disfigured in a demonic way, her hair blood red, with a hint of sunset tint, wearing a flowing white silky nightgown. Behind her sprouted wings of black and white. Every other feather was white or black. The tips curled at the ends, making her look like a half angel, half demon, half breed. She took her hands together and blew some black dust at Evie. "Evie, take Iolaus with you to find the Kuna pyramids." Lorelei smiled at her. Pieces of Lorelei started to turn to dust as she slowly disintegrated before Evie's eyes. "Lorelei, what if he doesn't know where to look?" "Evie, go to Eldor, the island of Nori, find the small inhabitants called Norianas. Then you will be able to find the passageway to the Kuna pyramids in the deep jungle of the ancient city of Paluma." Evie waved to Lorelei as she left. Evie's eyes went black as reality came flooding back to her. Lorelei looks exactly like Evie, just so we're all clear, okay? Okay. If you're wondering, it's a reincarnation thing. It's complicated. As you get further in the book, it will explain. Chapter 66, Eldor. I love Eldor. The first person Evie saw when reality flooded back was Iolaus, eyes worried with an uptight look upon his face. "Evie, are you all right, my love? Come back to me, please." "I'm fine, Iolaus." He helped Evie sit up, and she explained how they needed to travel toward Eldor and the mythical island of Nori. Down below the barn, animals made a purring noise, which caught her attention. Evie flew down the stairs so fast she barely realized that she could have injured herself. Down below sat a beautiful black stallion that filled her heart with tears for the creature's master. Evie couldn't help but sniffle and drop a few tears. Iolaus flew down the stairs just as fast and understood that Evie was taking a personal moment, trying to mourn in private. He took his fingers and wiped her tears away. Then they mounted Ithaca. Evie stood by Ithaca's rear end and rubbed her palms together. Light flickered in sparks. Evie rubbed the light into her sides, and those 20-foot black glimmering wings sprout. Then they were off to Eldor. A couple of hours later they met the Shield of Water. Entering cautiously, Evie followed the same path Lucy had taken her to the Elven Requiem Sanctuary. Evie still felt unsure about bringing Iolaus with her. Deep inside, Evie had to trust her gut feeling on him. Evie forgave him of everything he did, but her uncertainty still kept her alert. This time they moved cautiously through the jungle coral, approached the tree entrance. This place still amazed her. The coral plants moved away from the tree door entrance. The door swung open so fast that Evie jumped back in the saddle, startling Iolaus and Ithaca. Out popped a little elf child with more wood piled up to his nose, covering his mouth. His eyes were wide with surprise that Evie was back. He dropped the wood. With a clatter they fell to the gravel. He had a little gray beard. He glanced in shock from Evie to Iolaus, then high-skirted it as far away from them as possible, his beard blowing against him as he left view. He's not a child. He's an elf. Something seemed wrong. Last time they were friendly. Was it Iolaus? Maybe it was him they were afraid of. They entered the immense cylindrical room. Evie's mouth dropped. She was still mystified by the wondrous beauty of it all. The same little elvish man sat staring jubilantly at her with his magnificent neon purple eyes. He slowly stopped combing his beard and reading his scrolls to help them. "Ah, mistress, what have we here? How may I help you?" "Well, where to begin?" He jumped up really fast, his neon purple eyes focusing as if someone had just commanded him to be hospitable and what to say next. With a twinkle in his eyes, "Mistress, no time to waste. We have much to be done here." Then he talked about the Kuna pyramids and the Norianas on the island of Nori, the ancient pillar civilization of Paluma hidden in an ancient hole, revealing a jungle that led to the Kuna pyramids. "What do I do with the keys? I'm nervous about everything." "'Tis only natural, mistress. Reach your hands up to my small fingertips and I shall help you." Evie reached up to him. Iolaus grabbed her other hand and Ithaca for their suspenseful journey. Everything swirled. Then they were on the white beach, crystal waters and the waterfall engulfed in jungle plants. Chapter 67, Norianas. The further they went, Evie realized that she was once here before. Up ahead stood a once empty little abandoned village, with food that burned above the fire pits. As they entered through the clearing, something moved fast. Small creatures with huge feet that took up their bodies. Their eyes were demonic, engulfed in black, and they had huge little white mustaches and abnormal-sized noses. They were bald and about a foot wide and high from the ground. They moved fast and were virtually silent. Evie stopped and knelt low to sit and wait for one to come to her, unsure if this is what she was supposed to be doing. Patience was most certainly a virtue and worth the wait. One hopped from the jungle weeds to rest next to Evie's knees, which she was sitting on. Evie reached her hand out, and it hopped onto her open palm like a little bird. "Ah, are you in Noriana? Where can we find the Kuna pyramids?" The creature whispered. "Go to the ancient pillar civilization of Paluma. It's deserted now, but all you have to do is head back to the dead tree and wait for a sign. If you hear a festering creak, then step on that spot and it will lead you to the secret passage." Evie sat the small Noriana down, thanking him politely. Iolaus gave her a sideways glance of uncertainty. Then they trekked up the hill, passing the village of the Norianas. Just so we're clear, Norianas look like little itty-bitty, 1 foot wide and tall Albert Einsteins, okay? And they don't have hands, they just have flaps with little feathers on sticks holding them, okay? If you're wondering what they look like, that's what I drew up. It's my dedication to Albert Einstein. I love him. The tree was just as lonely as Evie had remembered it before. But this time Evie was ready for anything. Iolaus walked around the dead tree, branches twisting in agony. Evie stood at the base listening for a festering creak. Slowly the sound got larger. Then crack! The ground under Evie's feet let loose and down she went. Not before Iolaus grasped onto her by wrapping his arms under hers, holding Evie above a hole in the ground. She looked below to see more jungle life and a lava lake wrapping around the island directly below them. Iolaus whispered, "Are you ready? Close your eyes." He leapt upward, then they slunk through the hole and landed gently on the surface of the next hidden level of the untarnished life below. They settled for a moment. Then he let go. Evie turned to see a huge pyramid towering above them. Below the surface of the island of Nori was another world. A lava lake wrapped around the pyramid and jungle life. Iolaus wrapped his fingers into hers as they stepped closer to the Kuna pyramids. Evie pushed the two key pieces together and wrapped the stith under them, gently securing their hold. In the center of the door sat a place for them. Evie sat them in the place, and then she turned around, meeting Iolaus's lips, crisp and cool against hers. Stepping closer to the Kuna pyramids, a red-scaled dragon circles the outer perimeter of the foundation. While it called for its mate, the unnerving creature's red scales glistened from the lava lake light. The saddle empty, an unusual diversion. Pushing the key pieces and the medallion stith further into the wall, with a groaning creak, it opens. Air floods in. Inside, spirits and their mates danced. Blue ectoplasms attached like Siamese twins or ancient deformities, each dancing in the empty spaces. Dozens upon dozens of these floating, jubilant creatures swirled neon robin egg blue, with a hint of ectoplasm white. Evie stepped in and turned to find Iolaus, his eyes sad. Evie touched her lips to remember the soft, icy kiss they just shared moments before. Evie's eyes swelled up with a hint of pain. Evie knew she would never see him or this place again, yet he was part of her, even if Lorelei had to split him in half to give her a fighting chance at happiness. Yet it would have never been possible. She's talking about how Lorelei took one of the twins Iola specifically, and split him in half, and put the good parts of his soul into creating Aiden. Okay? That's why Evie fell in love with Aiden. That makes sense? But as soon as he killed Aiden, which is like my favorite character, which is BS, but as soon as he killed him, the soul reattached itself, so Iolus became the good twin. Okay? Or did he? Who knows? Let's continue. A shadow creeps behind unsuspecting Iolus. Hiding behind the king's immense form, the hidden person uses his left hand to grasp onto Iolus's head. Fingers digging into knots as he yanks even tighter, his right hand lifts a black metallic dagger up to Iolus's neck and slices through his flesh and bone to tear it off into oblivion. He does it so fast that part of the spine is still attached to the head, and they fall rolling through the jungle bushes down a slope where the lava feasts on his form. Cyrok Malutra leaps over him before he rolls, leaping for Evie's hand, but only gets disappointed as a blue glow engulfs her. The last thing Evie remembers is the stone wall closing and everything going white. Waking up on an old dirt brown sofa in the study. Chapter 68. Panic. Evie wakes up with her heart beating fast. It's racing, basically. Panic written all over her face. She glances down at the meager book resting in her lap. Large black binding overstretched across her wet lap. Inside, ancient pictures. She picked it up and turns to the front chapter and finds an illustration of the study, with her seated upon a couch and her brother climbing up on boxes. Every memory flooded back to her. She jumped off the couch and tossed the book across the room. It hit against the wall and seeped down the bricks to the floor under the desk. A cold sweat dampens her uniform, which consists of a white shirt, her cotton blue sweater, and her gray skirt. Worried, she jumps up and pulls the burgundy carpet up off of the floor to reveal no trapdoor. She then turns to the desk and searches for the key and flashlight. Something crawls up her hand, but this time she is ready and pulls it out and unravels the ribbon. She sticks Alfie back in the drawer, marveling at the key and how she knew it was there. Quickly she pockets the key and flashlight. She pulls the desk from the wall for another glance at that awful book. Flashing a light on the cover, she soon realizes it's the Odyssey. Confused, she calls out to Ashton. No response. Excuse me, I have to take a drink. My throat's getting dry. She calls out to Ashton. No response. Evie leaves the room to search for Ashton. Hears him complaining of pain from the fall he took off the boxes stacked up like stairs near the armoire. She finds him in the hallway, sitting on the banister to the grand white stairs. The maid, Mrs. Scorsese, pats Ashton on the back and sends the siblings on their way. Evie rushes Ashton and hugs him deeply. "Oh, Ashton, I have missed you so." He pulls back from the embrace, face twisting to a comical expression. "Evie, I have only been away from the room for about 5 minutes. Before that we had been in the study together. Was that book by Homer too frightening for your taste? You seemed to fall asleep minutes before my fall. I swear that I thought you were going to wake up and assist me, but I understand." "I understand you were immersed in the verses of old texts. You were barely snoring. I can say, Evie, that when I was looking out the window of the study I found a perfect way out of this manor. But we must leave while it is still raining and catch that first cargo ship out of London." "Ashton, could we leave for America?" I've always wanted to go there. He pulled back in for another reassuring hug and he's whispering, "Of course, dear sister, I would take you away from your arranged marriage to Sir Henry Lockhart. You should never have to marry without love or of knowing who you are about to marry." Evie handed Ashton the key, but kept the lavender ribbon for her hair. Ashton rushed back to the room for Alfie, and then met Evie by the back door of the manor. They crept from the property, headed for the Lettamore Concord vessel. Who's excited? Chapter 69. Okay. Just so you know, I wrote my hometown into the book. In the house I grew up in. Okay. And it's still there. And it's still blue. But we haven't lived in it for many years. So are you ready for chapter 69, my friends? Good. Starting a new life. The year is 1890 on October the 15th. Ashton and Evie, both 19 years of age, traveled further west toward the hottest part of the conventional continent. The sun was up and warm as they passed into an inconspicuous little town in Utah. Fall leaves fell passionately from the branches of local trees in the small town of Uniontown. Barely a strip of an old Uniontown main tied the town together. Beside the friendly locals and hard-working miners, everyone knew everyone. Heat flickered the atmosphere as a damp, chilling wind blew through to knock the heat from the blazing sun off course to give the slaving community a breather. Evie applied for a postal service of incoming and outgoing postal. She was hired from her friendly smile and jubilant demeanor. Ashton acquired a job at the local Uniontown copper mine near the Uniontown Mountain Bend. Both worked steady jobs and saved up for a little piece of property near town. A 2-level house with 2 bedrooms and a walk-in closet and a basement for storage space. I can't read my own writing. It's terrible. The house had a green siding and a metal fence that stretched around the property and the 3 storage sheds. She loved the house for the 3 trees and that grew from nothing. 2 little apple trees in the back and a huge jungle tree that kept the house cool during summer. Attached to the back door sat a little brown porch. The porch up front held 2 columns of white attached to an open half wall for privacy. The pathway was dingy from a careless owner before. An old dirt path led out the gate to the right, up toward old Magna Main. Trees overlapped the few houses on the block. Above, few clouds lingered in the fall slumber. One September day, a cowboy brings her a letter. His skin rugged, his hair wild and untamed in different shades of beige and dark brown, with eyes of emerald, with blue shooting from the centers of his corneas. Fireworks. He hands her the letter. She notices the gentle graze of stubble from his jawline and can't help but be mesmerized. Something about him makes her feel lightheaded. She opens it and reads. Dearest Lady Evie Trinity Bridgewater, I have traveled across oceans and deep deserted landscapes for your hand in marriage. Please do me the honor of marrying me. Sir Henry Lockhart. Evie glances up from the letter, noticing that he was suddenly gone. Confused, she puts the letter down and finds the gentleman on the wood porch of the postal block on Uniontown, Maine, kneeling. In his right hand he holds up a small, exquisite sterling silver ring with diamonds encrusted in the silver. His left hand he held his hat to his chest. The look in his eyes begged for her to answer his question. She hardly knew him, yet everything about him felt familiar. She was ready to settle down and start a life with this man of mystery. They had a lifetime for experiencing each other and growing together. She said yes. The postal shop closed at 7 p.m. sharp. Henry politely walked Evie to the house she shared with Ashton. Ready to say good evening, the sky, black, gray, silver, red, and white. Above an opening of trees sits Sire Akmalutra's face, surrounded by clouds. You can never escape me, Evie. You are rightfully mine. Evie holds tight to the white metal banister on the porch, her legs being pulled into the storm, Evie's fingers turning white. Then she lets go, but Henry grasps onto her arms, holding her for a split second. His eyes fall and full of confusion and shock as he can clearly see that the sky has a man talking in plain view. Henry's arms give, and Evie slips out and is sucked into the face of the storm. But wasn't this all a dream? What? Let's continue. Uniontown was what Magna was called before it became Magna, and it's a real town in Utah. I would know. I went to school out there. Okay, Chapter 70. Heavenless Peace. Evie woke up in the fetal position on a stone-cold floor. Her hair was wet from the storm. Her navy blue gown was moist. Evie was absolutely chilled to the bone. Dizziness crept into her conscience. Evie was unsure of this new place she was in. How was this all real? Evie checked the maroon carpet in the study, and the trapdoor was gone. How was this even possible from the beginning? Evie was a pawn in this chess game from hell? Was this her punishment for some undescribable crime she committed in a past life? Light danced in a flickering jubilance about the room from dozens upon dozens of candles. Every surface held a little wax instrument of light. A huge mecca of candles rested on the mantel above the blazing warm fireplace. Evie sat up and tried to reach for the pedestal in order to raise herself to her feet. Evie grabbed it for balance. Sire Akmalutra jumps from behind the pedestal, startling her. He grasps onto Evie. They begin to wrestle, but the water on her skin from the storm makes her slippery. Akmalutra leapt one final time to grab Evie, but she jumps back to avoid his vile fingers. But when she jumps back, she's only to tumble out the window of the tower, falling down onto rough cliff rocks that crack bones in her neck, paralyzing her suddenly. Down below, the rushing ocean spurts wash Evie's body into the water, where she may now lay in peace, away from the sorrow, or so she thought. Dun dun dun. Continue with me in Book 2, The Prince in the Mirror, if you want to know what happens to Evie. Alright? Thank you so much for hanging out with me and let me read this to you. Bye-bye now.